Yo, yo, what is up, everyone? Happy motherfucking Friday. Coach Des here. It's been about I want to say like 2 to 3 weeks since we have rocked on together. So as you're coming on, let me know if you are team live or team replay because myself and my team, we've been really trying to like hone in on messaging and hone in on just bandwidth and availability. You know, for a lot of our old vets in this group, thank you so much, by the way. You know, we were doing 3 lives a week, and I got to a point where I was just like all over the map with it. And I was like, you know what? Like, I kind of like these like longer trainings that I can do on Fridays. And so, we have a lot in store for you for this month and moving forward. We're going to be doing these on Fridays. So like I said, as you're coming on, say what's up to me. I always love that. I always love the engagement. And I always love just being able to talk with you all. So thank you so much. Okay. All right. So big thing that I wanted to discuss today and our big training today is actually something that I'm coming across a lot, not only just with our inner circle members, but just talking with a lot of you either through DMs or even on Instagram or other places, because usually right now is when most people kind of fall off on their resolutions. And I put them in quotes because oftentimes what does happen is like we're not being incredibly realistic about it. And we're putting all of our eggs in that basket and we're putting all of our worth in like, can we get that one thing done? And so I figured what would be really great is to get to a point where you're seeing progression as a way of a process. Okay. And by doing that, this is why I kind of titled this way, is to make sure that you're being aware of these 5 things that'll likely kill your 2021. Because when I talk with a lot of our inner circle clients and even just some of our members here in our OPN community, it's really hard. It's really hard not to get down on yourself when you're not as accomplished or you're not in a place where you're feeling a large amount of gratitude towards the overall process, which is really hard. It's a little bit of a mind F too. And so as you're coming in, again, let me know if you're team live and team replay. And the big thing too is hit me up in the comments when you're watching this is, hey, out of the 5 things that we're going to talk about, what's one thing or possibly 5, right? A lot of us, it might be 5. What's one of those things that you're currently struggling with? And what do you need in order, and who do you need to become in order to try to get past that? All right. And that's kind of where like asking for help. And that's kind of where just like the theme of this whole group, it's community support. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to teach, we're here to learn, and we're here to support one another. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and rock this out. I'm super excited about it. All right. First one, numero uno, comparison syndrome. Oh my God. How many of you out there have gotten to a point? I don't care if it's related to your dietary lifestyle. I don't care if it's related to your exercise, how you view yourself, your workplace, whatever that is. How many of us have gotten caught up in like, okay, well, so-and-so is making these types of results. Like, what's wrong with me? How come I can't get there? Because when we look at it from a dietary perspective, like nutrition and fitness, we're already against the wall, right? We have an ideal body for a female, an ideal body for a male, and it's really hard to navigate against that, because we've been told and programmed into thinking that this is the normal thing that we should be doing. We should look a certain way, right? Because right off the bat, and these are things that like, especially with our inner circle, you know, I spend a lot of time during coaching calls. You know, I spend a lot of time during like the knowledge bombs that I'll post for them, just really helping them to find fulfillment in the process. You know, I got told this a really long time ago, and it definitely resonated with me, which was in reference to this comparison syndrome. Is the only comparison that you need to make is to yourself 6 months ago and to yourself a year ago. And like, if we look at it just from a self-development standpoint, like we're still in a place of learning. We might be struggling. Our health might not be the best, right? Our mental health might not be the best. Yo, let's be real with one another. This past year was really fucking hard. It was, right? I'll raise my hand too. Like last year was incredibly hard. But I think the thing that last year taught me was an ability to be resourceful and to not quit and to keep going. Because there's going to be days where you're just not going to feel it, and that's okay. You just have to show up. And I think that's the big thing there. So like in reference to the comparison syndrome, like start to take a look, like more like bird's eye view. Like, okay, me compared to myself a year ago, where am I at? Right? You might be in a place where you're one of those people like, yo, like I'm worse. Okay, so what do we do with that? Right? Because I think that if we can do that, that's where you can set yourself up with better ownership. That's where you can set yourself up with like, okay, now that I'm owning that I'm struggling, right? What do I need? Do I need support? Do I need accountability partners? Do I need education? Do I need coaching? What do I need? Because I think you'll probably see here with that, as a lot of our inner circle members are posting their takeaways and trying to teach you about what they're doing. Yeah, 100% we're tackling nutrition, but it's about so much more. I think the coolest evolution that I get to see from the standpoint of coaching our inner circle is that I get to see them sell themselves on themselves, right? Because that's constantly what I'm doing. Any of you who I've talked to about our program, or any of you who have been like, Desi, I need some help. Like, I'm trying to sell you on you. I no longer need to sell this program. I need to sell you on you, because you are capable. And when we compare ourselves to others, we let the air out of that balloon. We don't take ownership behind what's going on, because we are comparing ourselves to things that aren't comparable. It's like apples to oranges. They're completely different. And that's one thing that I just want you to be aware of. So the only comparison that I need you to make, again, a coach told me this a while ago and it really resonated with me, was compare yourself to who you were 6 months ago and to a year ago. And therein lies the formula. Therein lies like, okay, do I need to get better in certain areas? And am I flourishing in certain areas? Okay. Numero dos. Oh my God. This is such a big one too. I just did a knowledge bomb, and I'm actually going to share my screen with you guys to kind of give you a little bit more of a visual. But stop lying to yourself about your own personal bandwidth. Okay. We all have the same number of hours per day. We've heard that before, right? I think oftentimes when I work with someone or I talk with someone, and I've been guilty of this myself, it's really hard for us to be realistic about the type of energy that we can provide towards just one goal. So if we're looking at it from a health perspective, like if you're like, hey, like, I really want to improve my confidence. I really want to improve my body composition. I get this a lot too. Like, hey, like, I want to be here for my kids. I want to be a healthy family member for my kids. We want to make sure that we're being realistic about the type of bandwidth that we have. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and kind of walk you through a little bit more. So what we have here is one of the knowledge bombs that I do for our inner circle. So each and every week, I'll throw something in there in reference to things that I'm seeing across the board with clients. Okay. And so with this personal bandwidth meter, what I did is like, okay, so we have these numbers in hours per day that you can focus on one of the 4 pillars, or all 4 of the pillars. Okay. So we got self-care, fitness, studying your craft, and then nutrition. Okay. So that could be meal prep, that could be eating, that could be planning, obviously exercise, that could be studying, like education, because a lot of you need education, and that's okay. All right. So having worked with Major League Baseball players and elite level athletes, I know that their craft is their job, right? So they're pushing in this meter like 8, 9, 10-hour days of study, nutrition, fitness, and then self-care, mindset training. Like, they're doing all of that. So they're still the types of people who are able to perform at a high level. They're still the same types of people who, from the standpoint of body composition, who in the amount of 30 to 60 days can gain 4 to 5 pounds of muscle and still lose 3 to 4 pounds of fat. Like, these are those like mutants of people, right? Because they've been able to dedicate their full-time job to their craft, to their body, to their mind. For a lot of us, we're trying to be better significant others. We're trying to be better people. We're trying to be better parents. We're trying to be better employees, entrepreneurs, like whatever that is. Let's make sure that we are really, really honest about the type of bandwidth that we can give towards a really big goal. Because when we look at it, some weeks it might be 1 or 2 hours per day, if that. Other weeks it might be 3 to 4. But what we need to start doing is taking personal accountability behind the stories that we tell ourselves. So if you're someone who is super irregular about your sleep and you're like, hey, I'm not a morning person, it's not that you're not a morning person. It's that you haven't been challenged and or given the opportunity to try to change some of these things, to try to get to bed at 9 or 10. I get it. Like, decompression, like I watch the same damn shows all the time, right? It's Always Sunny. It's The Office. And now, like, I've thrown in like Workaholics because I just want to laugh and decompress. And like, my college self is like, yo, I kind of just want to look back at nostalgia, because in the grand scheme, like, my biggest stressor in college was like a test. I would kill for that same type of stressor now, because now it's family, now it's everything else, it's business. It's funny how that works out, right? So when we look at your personal bandwidth, first, let's make sure that we're being really honest about the stories that we tell ourselves. And the second thing is, let's make sure that we protect our high energy times. I just got off a video call with one of our inner circle members, and we were talking about like, what are your high energy times? You know, for this person, it was like 1 to 2 hours after they woke up. And so what we did there is like, okay, let's protect that time. That's when you can dedicate your study. So in our case, like with our inner circle members, the study is our app. Like there's a lot of education going out there. You know, all of our community members are posting their meals, posting their exercise. And so you're constantly in a space of learning. Our strength conditioning coach is posting like Ask Me Anythings, like AMAs. He's posting videos. Like it's groundwork. And that's where I want you all to kind of think about this in a different way. So it's not that you don't have time. It's just that maybe you're not learning how to be efficient with the time that you do have. And then even worse, maybe you're not being realistic about your own personal bandwidth. You might be like really, really giving yourself the business about like, yo, Des, you should be spending 7 to 8 hours on this. You don't have 7 to 8 hours out of the day to do that. Okay. So that's our second thing. And I think this is a really big thing that I come across with people who are just onboarding as new clients. Numero tres. This is probably a big one too. Like thinking that you have to go about this alone. This is everything across business, across health, across productivity, fulfillment. You know, the longest study of happiness coming from Harvard found that like the most happiest people over a 90-year period were those that are the most heavily connected to their most important relationships, right? We're constantly thinking like, oh, health and happiness is like having a different body, having a smaller body, right? But I think the more that we challenge that, it's like, no, it's actually like your most important relationships. It's how often you like are able to navigate those and lean into those. You know, I think a couple, like 2 weeks ago, my siblings, so I'm the oldest of 5. All right. And so there's 4 boys and a girl. God, man, God bless her. and the man that she's going to marry. But we got together and like we went on a snowboarding trip, and it was phenomenal. Like it was just us being together. And we all left feeling incredibly fulfilled with just being with one another. Who are those people for you? Right? Because if you're navigating personal development, or you're navigating a goal and you're thinking that like no one is on your team or no one can support you, that might not be in your home. And for a while, like that's not okay. But that's part of like healthy communication. That's part of asking your partner for what you need. That's part of asking your family for what you need. Like, hey, for me, like, hey, like I'll tell my wife, like, babe, I need an hour and a half to go strength train and go for a walk. That's just what I need. And we kind of do that. Like she'll be like, hey, I need to do yoga tonight. Let's make sure that we like communicate. So we don't do this perfectly, but at the same time, like, and this really what continues to resonate with me, no successful person on this earth has ever said, I did this alone. So if you're someone on the other side of the screen watching on Team Live or Team Replay a little bit later, I want you to ask yourself, if you have a really big goal, but you've been trying to do this on your own this whole time, you haven't asked for help, you possibly haven't invested in the community or in coaching, or you haven't even hit up your accountability partners. Like, again, let's go back to ownership. This has to be on you. This has to be about your courage. And this has to be about you saying, you know what? I need help in these areas. Okay. So numero cuatro. This is another one too. Thinking you can sleep when you die. Man, I more and more research is coming out about this. And so oftentimes, like we look at pillars of health, it gets lost in the mix of like, okay, well, sleep is an important thing next to diet and exercise and mental health and self-care. But really, it's the foundation behind everything else. Because if we look at just a changing body, I mean, sleep is the time that we grow. It's when growth hormone gets released. And if you're looking to change your body composition, if you're looking to manage your blood sugars, if you're looking to manage your overall heart health, sleep is the foundation. And it's not so much like, oh my God, Des, like, how can I get 8 hours of sleep? Like I function well off of 5 or 6. Well, do you? Because if you're doing that, like you're probably functioning off of 75, maybe even 60%. And if you're feeling good about 60%, I mean, where's the other 40 going? That means your family is getting 60% of you, your work is getting 60% of you, and like you are getting 60% of you. That's crazy to think about. And so instead of thinking of it like, oh my God, I need 8 hours, like, no, think of it as regularity. Think of it as, okay, can I be consistent? And this is a theme across the board. Can I be consistent with the time that I go to bed? Can I be consistent with protecting that time? Instead of like watching a Netflix special or doing something that's going to like make our mind think like, okay, we have to think, we have to problem solve, we have to do all these things. Instead of doing that, get to a place where you're able to kind of rest and digest. Right. And this is something that I'm still fine tuning. There are times where I'm just like, like I'm watching a really funny show and I kind of just want to have it on as I'm going to bed. But this, like, again, it goes back to like 4 to 5 days out of the week. Can you be consistent with that? And it's going to do magic for you too, because if you're waking up super, super tired, you're having to crush like 2, 3, 4, 5 coffees and some Red Bulls and Monsters and whatever throughout the day. Again, it's not that you have an energy crisis, it's that you have a sleeping crisis. Okay. Now, our fifth one, and this is probably one of my favorite ones too. A lot of you are quitting on yourself way too mother freaking fast. Okay. And I know this because I talk with a lot of you. I know this because when a lot of you have reached out like, hey, like I really want to join, like, what's this look like? Like, look, it's an investment in your time, your finances, and really just your personal mindset. Because half the time when others have not come on, it's because like they're not sold on their ability to use their finances and their energy to help them be successful. They're thinking like, okay, like this either probably isn't worth it or I can't do it. But before we get there, I kind of want to walk you through something that I walk our inner circle members with in reference to creating a bulletproof mindset. Okay. So let me go ahead and pull this up again. Okay. So these are our emotional cycles of change. All right. And so this is kind of how this is mapped out with the way that you kind of do any behavior or any goal. All right. So first things first, we're going to start off like at the start of our cycle, which is your uninformed optimist. How many of us have joined something new, a gym or a program? I know a lot of our inner circle members, shout out to you all. I know you've probably felt this way. When you first start something, like you're an uninformed optimist, it's something new. Like in a lot of cases with our inner circle members, like, yo, I got a community now. I'm not doing this alone. I got a coach who is knowledgeable, who really cares about like what I'm doing. I have the support. Like I'm starting to see some results right away. Like I'm eating better. I'm feeling great. I'm not dragging ass every day. Like they're just uninformed optimists. They're just like really, really excited. And then they get to a point where they become a little bit more of an informed pessimist. Like, damn, this is hard. I thought it was I knew it wasn't gonna be easy, but I didn't know it was gonna be like this hard. And this is usually when you're trying to navigate like different health behaviors or different goals or different, just you living your most authentic life, like self-development. This is usually from like days 30 to 60, right? Because that honeymoon phase of the uninformed optimist is done. Now you're like, shit, like this is hard. Like, damn, like this is going to take some time. Like how do I navigate this? Which is hard to swallow, right? And so from here, what does tend to happen and what happens with most people, and this is where they mess up. This is why people are constantly quitting on themselves. They get into that valley of despair. Damn, this isn't right for me, or I can't do this. Like there's just no way. Like I don't know. And they get caught there. And what happens is they get caught up in the cycle of that valley of despair. And so they end up quitting, thinking like, all right, let me go try the next thing. We see this in dieting behavior all the time, right? We see this in exercise programming. We see this in health behaviors. You even see a lot of this in business too. Like, let me go try something else, right? What you need to do in this place is first to acknowledge that you are there and to sit in that pain and disbelief of like, oh my God, like, do I have what it takes? Because a lot of us really don't suffer from a quitting syndrome. You suffer from an imposter syndrome, right? You suffer from thinking that you're not worth it. You suffer from thinking that you don't have what it takes. You suffer from thinking that, maybe something's better, right? And so what you do is you get caught up in the valley of despair, and then you go to something else, and then you become an uninformed optimist, and then an informed pessimist, and then you're in the valley of despair, and then you quit all over again. And some of us are okay with doing that, which like breaks my heart. Because at that point, if you're just doing that, but you're super hard on yourself and you're shaming yourself and your negative self-talk is through the roof, you are signing up to continue to simply exist in life and not to live. Because a lot of us are just stuck in the day to day. Like, we don't do things for ourselves. We don't do hard things. We aren't uncomfortable. We don't ask for help. We don't invest in ourselves. Like, there's just a lot that happens here. Now, for some of you who are really keyed into this, like, I also want you to think about something. So when you're in that place of valley and despair, the couple things that are going to get you through that is, one, vulnerability and asking for help. Any of our inner circle members can tell you this right now. And I tell them this before they sign on, like, hey, before I give you an okay, before I celebrate a win of you investing in yourself, investing your hard-earned finances and your time, can I ask you a question? And I'll say to them, like, look, I don't expect you to be perfect, because you're not going to. I expect you, for us to get to a point where we are 80% consistent with some of the things that we're trying to navigate. And during the 20%, I expect you to have healthy communication. I expect you to reach out when you need help. I expect you to make sure that your communication is on point, because the things that are going to get you past that valley of despair is going to be asking for help, is going to be leaning into your support systems. And a lot of times, especially with our inner circle, like, we got 20 plus people in there that are constantly just asking questions and trying to get better. Some of them are better than others. And at the same time, in coaching calls, like, we're trying to take a look at the mindset piece to be like, hey, something's going on if you're struggling, right? Some of you might not be reaching out. Where is this coming from? Because it could be cultural, it could be systemic, it could be a lot of things. But this is where coaching, and this is where accountability, and this is where community can help you get to that point where you're constantly quitting into that phase of being an informed optimist. Wow, this is hard, but you know what? I have what it takes. I have an accountability partner. I have a coach. I have Coach Des. I have people who I'm able to relate to, because I'm not alone anymore. Like, holy crap, like, who would have known? Now that I know that I'm not alone, I can be successful. Because once you get into that place, then success is right around the corner. And from a coaching perspective, I'm trying to help you navigate what success for you looks like. Because your version of success and mine might be completely different. But then it goes back to this first one, comparison syndrome. Hey, is your expectation of yourself realistic? Or is it a comparison to someone else or something that has nothing to do with you? Right? And that's where fulfillment has its place. And that's where you can find these things that are super important for you to understand, to get to that point where you're like, okay, now that I'm out of that phase of all or nothing thinking, then I can start actually looking at some of the gray areas. Then I can actually start looking at, like, okay, like, I am successful in these ways. And those are the things right there, people, that are going to get you from thinking that, like, you're a failure to pushing the needle 1% forward almost every single day. Right? Because during coaching calls with our inner circle, like, we usually spend the first 10 to 12 minutes on, like, okay, what's going right? I get it. You're you're being mean to yourself right now. You got negative self-talk. You think that you should be X amount of pounds down by that. Like, I get all that. But before we get there, before I dice up your mindset, what are you thankful for? Right? What are you doing right now that you feel really good about? Because if you're thinking to yourself now, and for those that are watching on live and replay, I want you to let me know in the comments, like, which one are you really struggling with? And what are you doing to get past that? Okay. Because as we do this kind of does that first thing that I asked you to do, which is like, yo, ask for help, ask questions. And that's where I think a lot of the magic is. Okay. So here's our training for this Friday. I hope that this completely resonates with you. If you want to be in a place of learning, I want you to do a couple things. First things first, if there's something on here that really resonated with you and you're watching it live, I want you to take a screenshot and I want you to share it on your social media. I want you to share it either on your Facebook stories or your IG stories, just like, hey, I'm struggling with this. This is what I just learned. Because when you teach twice, you learn. Okay. And that's why you see everyone on here posting their takeaways. Because first you learn, then you do, and then you teach, and then we complete that learning cycle, right? And so if you're able to do that, that's going to be super helpful. So that's the first thing. The second thing is audit your tribe, right? Audit the people around you. Are those people that you can have good conversations with, that can start navigating better health and better mental health behaviors? And if they're not, then you either choose to have that really uncomfortable conversation with them, or you choose to get rid of them. right? Because your vibe attracts your tribe. I had a really good friend tell me that once, like, yo, this makes total sense to me, because we're a product of the 5 most people that we hang out with. So we need to choose those people very, very, very succinctly, very carefully. All right. So I hope this resonates with you all. Let me know in the comments which one that you are working on. Like I said, take a screenshot, share on social media. I'd love to see the engagement. Much love to you all. I'll see you next Friday. Peace.